the bill that the agreement became a bill that Kevin McCarthy and Joe Biden agreed upon to suspend the debt ceiling for 2 years in exchange for some policy concessions between Kevin McCarthy, the Republicans, and Joe Biden that we've been covering extensively. If you want my thoughts on the specifics of it, look back at past segments and the negotiations and all of that. I've talked plenty. Now, I bring to you, number one, the fact that the bill is passed in the House, so we'll see it go to the Senate next. It looks like it can pass in the Senate and will end up suspending the debt ceiling in time to continue paying the country's bills, again, in exchange for some bad concessions. But as I've talked about, I think Biden did a pretty good job negotiating, even though he probably in principle shouldn't have negotiated. But it passed 314 votes to 117. And so 71 Republicans voted against it. We've heard a lot of them speaking out. 46 Democrats voted against it, but it passed the House, going to the Senate. What I want to talk about in this segment is there seems to be a mutiny forming within the Republican Party. It might be just talk, but it's against Kevin McCarthy, and there are some who are against this agreement. They don't think Kevin McCarthy got enough concessions out of Biden. There's not enough spending cuts. We're not taking enough money away from people who really need it. And so they're really upset with Kevin McCarthy for that. And I want to walk through some examples of that. A lot of this is things that people said before the bill is actually passed about what we're going to have to do if the bill gets passed. Before I show that to you, though, there was just this strange moment after the bill was passed where Kevin McCarthy, I guess, gets asked about the Democrats supporting the bill in the House. And he just had a really strange energy. Overselling, my man.
Sometimes they hired none. I'm bringing back the next $60 billion to them. So this is great. I think it's wonderful that they voted for it because they are now on record. So they can't sit there and yell, this isn't good. So I'll bring something back tomorrow. Let's get the rest of the IRS agents. Let's get the rest of the work requirements. Let's cut more because we are in a big debt. This is fabulous. This is one of the best nights I've ever been here. I thought it would be hard. I thought it'd be almost impossible just to get to 218. Now I found there's a whole new day here. We've woken them up. Sometimes they hired none.
Kevin, what's going on? I'm going over. I'm going to go for spending cuts. I'm going to do it. It's going to be great. It's fantastic. It's fabulous. Okay. I don't know why that was so strange to me. Well, let's go through some of this. So Dan Bishop is very unhappy. By the way, just back to the Kevin McCarthy clip. It's wild how enthusiastic some of these politicians can be about cutting spending or adding work requirements and just directly hurting so many people. And the fact that people support that is wild, because if we want to talk about lowering the deficit, making sure we're responsible with debt and all that, fiscal responsibility, I've gone through in the past. Undeniably, when you look at the record historically, Democrats are more fiscally responsible, have a better record on those exact things Republicans say they're concerned about. But if we were concerned about, okay, we need to get this ratio under control where we're not spending so much more than we're taking in tax revenue, which is how we rack up debt, why don't we start with the fact that the richest people in this country pay an effective tax rate in the single digits? Let's start there. Then maybe we get to spending later on. Why wouldn't we start, though, with an obvious thing that would not hurt anyone because these individuals can afford to pay so much more? But no, it start with nickel and diming those low-income working Americans. Start there. Let's not talk so much about those who have plenty, who pay, like I said, a single-digit effective tax rate. Really enraging. But now, getting to the mutiny that's forming. Dan Bishop was on Steve Bannon's podcast and said this.
Kevin McCarthy is emasculating himself and the Republican majority. And so the bill's bad on its own terms, and that's worth knowing.
Yes, we'll go through that in a second. Yep.
But the significance is that it is blowing up. It is reverting to norm in terms of the way Washington works and abandoning the possibility of something with a different dynamic through this.
All right. He's emasculating himself, apparently. And this was also Dan Bishop in a different setting.
How much confidence do you have in the speaker right now?
None. Zero. What basis is there for confidence? You cannot forfeit the tool of Republican unity. It was not necessary to do.
Is the speaker lying about the way he's characterizing this bill?
Yes, he's lying. But
Ooh. I mean, that's some language. That's serious. And then you had Chip Roy. This is being reported on. Roy calls the deal a betrayal of the power sharing arrangement that we put in place among House GOP. Adds, if he can't kill it in Rules Committee, which he wasn't able to, or on the floor, then we're going to have to then regroup and figure out the whole leadership arrangement. Again, what does that mean? Kevin McCarthy, watch out. Then you had Matt Gaetz saying this.
What will the Freedom Caucus do if the people who are objecting to this bill get overridden? If the Republicans get overridden by a Republican speaker teaming up with Democrats to pass this bill?
Again, I think the operative question there is whether or not the speaker can get to a majority of the majority. If a majority of Republicans are against a piece of legislation and you use Democrats to pass it, that would immediately be a black letter violation of the deal we had with McCarthy to allow his ascent to the speakership, and it would likely trigger an immediate motion to vacate. I think Speaker McCarthy knows that. That's why he's
Immediate motion to vacate. Now, they did get a majority of House Republicans to vote for it, so that doesn't fall within what he said. But also they did get Democrats to get on board. And then I have for you GOP Rep Ken Buck.
Congressman Ken Buck of Colorado. Congressman, thanks for taking the time today.
Thank you.
So you heard the speaker say to my colleague Manu Raja there that he is not at all concerned about any potential threat to his leadership following this agreement, which you oppose. Should he be concerned?
Yeah, I think he should be concerned. I'm not suggesting that the votes are there to remove the speaker, but the speaker promised that we would operate at 2022 appropriations levels when he got the support to be speaker. He's now changed that to 2023 levels plus 1%.
And that's one of the parts of the negotiations that made me really happy, because if we had gone back to 2022 numbers, that would have been disastrous for how many cuts we went through in the past. The expectations as to how many cuts to different programs that would cause because of how much was done for the 2023 year spending. But instead it was 2023, which was frozen, which, as I've been saying, it's not like we're going to get a huge increase from that to crucial programs while the majority was made up of House Republicans. So it's not, I'm not discussing this because necessarily I think Kevin McCarthy is going to be removed. There could be a lot of rage and he has to deal with that. It'll be hard to pass things, and that's all good. We want it to be difficult within the House GOP, just kind of doing their things. But more so because this represents what people were warning about when he got his speakership. You've now handed over your party to the most extreme edge of it. And that's how he was able to become speaker. We remember the whole debacle with all the votes, 15 or something votes it took, and he had to make so many concessions and make so many promises. And it represented the way that, as I've said many times now, MAGA has become the engine of the party. And as you know about a vehicle, if your engine isn't on board with driving, then you can't drive. I don't know. And that's what's going on here now. Even though they don't make up a majority of the party, the extreme part of the Republican Party in the House can kind of drive the car oftentimes, or at least cause a lot of trouble. So Kevin McCarthy has to keep them happy, and that's why he's become so close with Marjorie Greene and publicly showing his support for her, is to keep MAGA happy with him. And so even if you have more moderate parts of the GOP, and here them uniting with Democrats allowed not that all of them who voted were moderate, because some just didn't want to default, but in this situation, we were able to get the thing done. Awesome. We were getting close to an economic disaster, so you see why there was extra motivation. We're not going to have that in other situations, but it doesn't matter when. It matters that we got that passed, but as to what's driving the party, it doesn't matter that there are some moderate Republicans when they don't have the same say that the extreme ones do. And until the aggressive nature that is kind of waged, the way in which extreme MAGA Republicans very aggressively go after moderate Republicans when they get in the way, until moderate Republicans are able to do the same with extreme MAGA Republicans and really wage a political war, we're going to see the GOP be controlled by, and someone like Kevin McCarthy bossed around by most of the time, this MAGA part of the party. Even though right here, and I didn't show you this time, but we talked about Lauren Boebert too being against this bill, and many others, even though this time it was able to get through because of the stakes probably, but in many other situations that's not going to be the case. And Kevin McCarthy's speakership is so much now defined by him handing over the party to these extreme Republicans.